A very high IQ can become dangerous in a quiet way, not because it makes you broken, and not because intelligent people are doomed to suffer, but because a mind this powerful can start reaching too far. It sees more variables. It catches consequences earlier. It keeps pushing for clarity long after clarity has stopped being possible. So, little things do not stay little. A conversation keeps expanding after it ends. A risk branches into 5 versions. A moment of uncertainty turns into a problem your mind feels responsible for solving, and that is where peace begins to thin out. Not because intelligence itself is the problem, and not because high intelligence automatically means greater psychological instability. Current evidence does not support that kind of simple universal conclusion, but the opposite myth is not true either. Intelligence does not automatically give you peace. Because some minds start using cognition as if it should be able to do everything. Prevent pain, remove uncertainty, protect connection, close every open loop. It cannot. And when thought is asked to do work no mind can fully finish, intelligence stops feeling like a gift of clarity and starts becoming a form of pressure. So the real question is no longer, why am I like this? The real question is, what must a mind like this learn if it wants peace? One of the first mistakes a highly intelligent mind makes is very simple. It follows too much. Psychologists have a term for part of this pattern: need for cognition. It means some people naturally spend more time thinking, analyzing, and mentally working things through than others do. Thinking is not just something they use when they have to. It is something the mind tends to return to on its own. And that is not a flaw. In many ways, it is a strength. It helps you catch problems early. It helps you notice weak logic, missing details, bad timing, hidden risk. It helps you improve things before other people even realize something is off. But that strength has a trap built into it. A text message comes in, and your mind keeps going after the meaning. Not just the words, the tone, the pause, the timing, what was left out. You start an email and then stop, because another version sounds better. Then a better one after that. A conversation ends, but your mind does not. Part of you is still trying to clean it up, finish it, understand it, fix it. And even a vague feeling can become a whole investigation. Not because you are dramatic, because your brain keeps assuming there must be something there to figure out. That is the mistake. Not that you think, not that you are intelligent. The mistake is treating too many thoughts like they deserve your full attention. That is when the mind gets tired. Because useful thoughts and useless thoughts start getting the same amount of energy. So the first shift is this: not every thought deserves to be followed. A better question is this thought helping me solve something real, make something clear, or is it just giving my mind something to do? Because you are not wrong for liking thought, but you will wear yourself out if you treat every thought like a job. A lot of people do not overthink because they enjoy suffering. They overthink because thinking feels better than uncertainty. It feels better than waiting for an answer that is not here yet. Better than sitting in a situation that has not settled. Better than admitting that something important is still unclear and may stay that way for a while. And psychology does have a name for part of this pattern: intolerance of uncertainty. In simple terms, it means having a hard time with the unknown, the unconfirmed, the unresolved. The APA notes that people differ in how they respond to uncertainty, and research treats intolerance of uncertainty as a meaningful factor in how people react to ambiguous situations. So the mind starts making promises it cannot keep. If I think a little more, I will feel safer. If I prepare a little more, I will avoid the mistake. If I understand this person clearly enough, they will not catch me off guard later. If I keep turning the situation over, maybe life will hurt less when it finally arrives. That is the trap. Thought can sharpen judgment. It cannot buy immunity. More thinking does not make you permanently certain. More preparation does not protect you from every wrong turn. More understanding does not make you impossible to surprise. Uncertainty is not a flaw the mind can fully remove. It is part of being alive. And peace starts to return when the goal changes, not from thinking to no thinking, but from needing total certainty to building a better tolerance for not having it. Because the mind calms down not when life becomes fully predictable, but when it learns that uncertainty does not have to be conquered to be survived. And this is where many intelligent people get trapped without noticing it. They mistake mental activity for insight. But a thought repeating itself is not always a sign that it is deep. Sometimes it is just a sign that the mind is still busy. That matters, because once cognitive load gets high, the brain does not always become wiser. Sometimes it just becomes louder. It keeps predicting, it keeps threat scanning, it keeps feeding the same thought different costumes so it can keep your attention. And that is why looping can feel meaningful even when it is no longer useful. Here is a simple way to tell the difference. If a thought keeps returning, ask, is anything new being added? Is any decision becoming clearer? Is there any next action I can actually take? Or am I only getting more tired? Those are the signs. If there is no new information, no clearer decision, no real next step, and only more exhaustion, then you are probably not in depth anymore. You are in a loop, and that distinction matters. Because activity is not insight. A busy mind can feel intelligent while doing nothing but burning energy. A repeating thought can feel important while giving you no new truth at all. So here is the tool. Is this thought deep or just active? That one question can interrupt a lot of unnecessary suffering. And this is where a lot of highly intelligent people blame themselves for symptoms their environment helped create. Research on gifted adults keeps circling back to the same truth. Well-being is not just about what is inside the person. It is also shaped by fit, by work context, counseling needs, life satisfaction, and the environments people are trying to function inside. Studies on gifted workers, for example, found that well-being and sustainable employment improved when they were able to get what they valued in work, and that autonomy, supportive leadership, and better understanding of their own cognitive processes could help. That matters more than people think. At work, some environments drain a high IQ mind fast, too many interruptions, too little autonomy. A deep mismatch between what you value and what the place rewards. Or the opposite problem, your cognition is either underused and starving, or overloaded in a chaotic way that never becomes meaningful. So you sit in a meeting, see the flaw in the plan before anyone else says a word, and already know that if you bring it up too early, you become the difficult one. You want to speak precisely. The room wants speed. You explain something seriously. The answer comes back, you're overthinking. And by the end of what looked like a completely normal day, you are exhausted in a way that is hard to explain. The same thing happens socially. Not every room has the same appetite for complexity. Not every conversation wants nuance. Not every environment knows what to do with a mind that naturally adds layers, qualifications, and second-order consequences. And that mismatch is not always rejection. Sometimes it is just mismatch. This is not about superiority. It is about fit. Because there are patterns that look like personality flaws when you live in the wrong context long enough. You start calling yourself too much, too intense, too hard to please, too hard to be around. But sometimes the real problem is simpler than that. You have been trying to function well in environments that keep grinding down the way your mind works. So fit is not a luxury. For a mind like this, fit is protection. Choosing better contexts is not weakness. It is one of the ways intelligence stops paying such a high price just to survive. There is one more trap that can look like intelligence from the outside, while feeling like pressure from the inside. Perfectionism. And we should be careful here. Not every highly intelligent person lives like this. But some gifted samples do show higher self-oriented perfectionism, and other work has found higher scores on traits like perfectionism and prudence in gifted groups. In other words, the pattern is real in some groups, but it is not a rule you should force onto every person with a high IQ. That distinction matters, because standards are not the problem. Wanting to do something well is not the problem. Caring about quality is not the problem. The trap begins when standards stop guiding you and start judging you. You do not begin. Because the best version is not ready yet. You keep thinking, just a little more, then I'll do it right. You finish something, and instead of relief, you feel the gap between what you made and what you imagined. You succeed, and some part of you still says it does not count. Your potential stops feeling like a gift and starts sounding like a judge. That is why perfectionism is so deceptive. It sounds like intelligence. In real life, it often behaves like fear. So the correction is not to lower your standards, it is to stop using them as a weapon against yourself. Because real excellence is not perfection. It is honest effort, movement, revision, and recovery. And a mind like this does not become stronger by demanding a flawless life from itself. It becomes stronger when it can keep moving without needing every step to prove its worth. So, what actually gives a high IQ mind peace? Not more stimulation, and not more achievement alone. Research on intellectually gifted adults suggests that meaning in life is especially important for their subjective well-being. Some studies even found that a generative orientation, using one's abilities in ways that contribute to other people or to something beyond the self, can support meaning and, through that, well-being over time. That matters because stimulation, achievement, and meaning are not the same thing. Stimulation keeps the mind busy. Achievement keeps the mind engaged, but meaning gives the mind somewhere to stand. A busy mind is not the same thing as a fulfilled mind. You can be mentally occupied all day and still feel strangely empty. You can achieve things, solve things, improve things, and still feel as if your intelligence is spinning without landing anywhere real. And for a lot of highly intelligent people, that is the deeper problem. They do not lack thought, they do not lack analysis, they do not lack mental movement. What they often lack is a direction real enough for thought to serve. That is why peace comes easier when intelligence is tied to something concrete. Creating something real, building something useful, contributing to other people, serving work that feels meaningful, or carrying a responsibility that is larger than self-monitoring. Because once intelligence has something meaningful to serve, it stops feeding on itself so much. It has a place to go, a reason to organize around, a structure bigger than endless self-analysis. And that is the shift. Not less intelligence, not less depth, not less thought, but a life where thought is no longer wandering in circles because it finally has something real to belong to. So if we gather everything together, the answer is not complicated. It is just easy to miss when the mind is used to making everything more complicated than it needs to be. A high IQ mind usually has to learn 5 things. Not every thought deserves pursuit. Thinking cannot eliminate uncertainty. Mental activity is not always insight. Fit matters more than functioning everywhere. Meaning stabilizes what stimulation alone cannot. That is the answer. Not because these 5 lessons make life easy, and not because they remove pain, risk, disappointment, or complexity, but because they stop intelligence from being wasted in the wrong places. They stop the mind from treating every open loop like an emergency. They stop thought from becoming a substitute for tolerance. They stop smart people from blaming themselves for contexts that do not fit. They stop stimulation from pretending to be fulfillment. So this is not a lesson in becoming smaller. It is a lesson in using something powerful more honestly. You do not need less intelligence. You need less misuse of it. And that is often the difference between a mind that keeps wearing itself down and a mind that finally begins to protect its peace. So maybe peace does not come from finally thinking enough. Maybe it begins when intelligence stops asking itself to do jobs it cannot finish, to erase uncertainty, to make every room understand you, to force every outcome to become safe. Maybe peace begins when intelligence stops trying to outrun uncertainty, misfit, and self-pressure. You do not have to follow every thought. You do not have to fit into every room. You do not have to turn your potential into a sentence against yourself. And if some part of this felt uncomfortably familiar, maybe that is not a sign that something is wrong with you. Maybe it is a sign that your mind has been working too hard in the wrong places for too long. And if this kind of quiet psychological truth-telling helps you put language around patterns you have lived but rarely heard named out loud, that is what Psyche-Life is here for. If this spoke to you, leave a comment with the line that hit hardest. share it with someone whose mind might need it, and stay close to Psyche-Life for more.